Good evening, students. Professor Mortimer here, coming to you live from my basement, where has this quarantine thing got you down? It's got me pretty down. My shirt isn't pressed. I haven't actually tied a bow tie in what feels like months. My hair unkempt. Sometimes I get around to shaving. Anyway, I happen to be going through some odds and ends that I have here lying about in the basement when I came across this article, which I had actually clipped from the New York Times back when it was first published on, what's the date I have here? April 21st of 1896. The professor looks pretty good for his age, don't you think? Now, I wanted to read it to you because while I can't be out with Haunted Manhattan sharing stories on the streets of New York, I figured I could share with you a little bit of haunted history this way. Now, again, this was published in the New York Times. I'm not making that part up. We don't make anything up at Haunted Manhattan. The headline is, Flatbush has a ghost. It has returned for its hand, which Mr. Norton dug up. I'll read it to you here, and I'll give you a little bit of commentary as we go along. The old town of Flatbush, now the 29th ward of Brooklyn, has a ghost. A Simon Pure, sure enough ghost. Simon Pure. We need that expression, that turn of phrase to come back. That nightly walks on East Broadway near Nostrand Avenue and stops at the house of Charles Norton to make inquiries for a hand that it lost there many years ago while its restless spirit was in the flesh. I wonder if Martin McDonough came across this article at some point. This is for my theater nerd friends. These visits are not fully appreciated by Norton or his wife, but it appears that Norton is to blame for the appearance of this ghost, because his ghost ship, his ghost ship was not heard of until Norton, while searching for gold in his cellar, like you do, dug up a hand that had lain undisturbed for years. It just gets better. There was a ring on one of the fingers of the exhumed hand, and when this had been rubbed, the ghost, in true Arabian Nights fashion, appeared, and as it failed to get instructions from Norton, it is now said that all it wants is the hand and ring, and that thereafter it will cease worrying the descendants of the early Dutch in Flatbush. Let's just think about that for a moment. According to this article, this guy finds a hand buried in his basement. He finds a ring on said hand. He touches the ring. The ghost appears. The ghost demands the hand and ring, and I don't know, did he say no? Or could it, in its incorporality, could it not get the... I don't understand. And now the ghost is still hanging out somewhere, appearing every now and again, demanding said hand and ring. Anyway, we'll keep going. The story that the old Dutchmen in the town tell of the ghost is that 60 years ago, a belated traveler with lots of gold in his belt stayed overnight at the farmhouse of one Krug, a thrifty Dutch farmer. Krug, he's known as just the one name. He's kind of like Cher or Prince. Just everyone knows Krug. So Krug... when he heard of the large amount of gold that his visitor had about him, gave up his own room to the stranger and insisted that he should occupy it. The next day, the visitor had disappeared, and when the family asked Krug about it, he said the man had departed before daybreak. The bedclothing was also missing, and Krug accounted for this by saying he had burned it because the stranger had just recovered from an attack of yellow fever. You know, mid-1800s, that's fair to get rid of the bedclothes. I mean, it's like if nowadays the guy had shown up without a mask, you'd naturally be concerned and want to take any necessary precautions. Subsequently, a man's hand was found behind the bed. It had been cut off by Krug with an axe, it is said. Think about that. He had the foresight to burn the bedclothes, but not to properly dispose of the hand. Okay. When the hand was found, Krug disappeared, of course, and the hand was buried, naturally, in the basement. Mrs. Norton, in speaking of... so we're back to present day, or present 1896 day. Mrs. Norton, in speaking of this guest and its uncanny visits, said the house was haunted and continued, this is a quote, "Everybody who has lived here since murder was done under this roof has had bad luck. One man who occupied the house about 40 years ago left his wife and children and ran away with another man's wife. Another was a burglar, and when he was caught, a whole lot of silverware was found buried in the cellar. Another committed suicide. The last one's a bit more tragic than the others. We've been here for 6 years now, and there has been nothing but sickness in our family. I don't like to talk about these things. It sends a chill down my back. End quote. So Mrs. Norton does attribute the terrible state of affairs of her family to this tragedy having been done there. But remember what the article said earlier. It's all Mr. Norton's fault. So this is how it concludes. Norton, while hunting for the silverware supposed to be buried in his cellar, dug up 2 rusty Revolutionary swords and several pieces of ancient coin before the hand was unearthed. He could have just stopped at the 2 Revolutionary swords and ancient coin, but no, who knows what other treasures are in there. Isn't that what everybody does, I guess? I mean, I told you I was actually going through this pile of goodies back here. Actually, I do have a mound of dirt over there. I've been digging up my bait. No, it's very strange. 1896, they were up to some queer things. Maybe it's just because I live in Queens, there's nothing buried here. But anyway, that is this article. Again, this is a Simon Pure article. It was indeed published in the New York Times. If you search out on their website, it's there. I checked. April 21st, 1896, page 9. Again, the title is Flatbush Has a Ghost, if you want to see it in its original context. Thank you for joining me for this little story. I hope I entertained you at least a little bit while you're stuck at home, socially isolating. Now, we cannot wait here at Haunted Manhattan to get back to sharing with you stories out in the open air and giving you some haunted history of New York. But in the meantime, I'll try to dig up, as it were, a few more of these fun little pieces of haunted history. Hope everyone's staying safe. Take care of yourselves. Wash your hands.